Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Williams Project podcast. This is episode 167, and welcome to 2025. Now, it is Matthew Horncastle, and we have a special guest here, James Wallace, who is a good friend of mine, and he also does a lot of the Williams Corporation digital marketing. He's been on many podcasts before, and we're just going to be chatting. This podcast was something very special that we started a very long time ago, and we're going to make an effort to produce more content, especially in this space, this date and moving forward. So, James, thanks very much for coming down.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. I'm pleased we're through the setup. The tech is working.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, we bought all new podcasting tech. Like, we spent the money. We've got amazing stuff. So hopefully my voice sounds really crispy, really sharp. But getting it working was a rigmarole. We've invested an hour of our lives to get to this moment.
Yes.
So, yeah. And my lovely business partner, Blair Chappell, was supposed to be here, but he had too many drinks last night and he didn't want to do it. So James was supposed to come here and film, and now he's arrived. But also Blair's actually normally pretty good. He doesn't do that often. So we'll let it slide this time. So James, I reckon other than a general chit-chat, because you and I are professionals at that, I think there's definitely some value in talking about marketing, because that's your expertise. And then I probably want to discuss the Williams Corporation flywheel, which is a new concept I'm developing for the success of our empire. Should what topic is exciting you at the moment? Do you want to talk general marketing? Do you want to talk paid marketing, personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably in the welcome to 2025 kind of theme of it is I think things are changing pretty quickly out there at the moment, especially from a overarching business perspective. The market appears to be heating up. I think I didn't really, and I know you're kind of the same, I didn't really prescribe to the thrive or survive till 25 thing, and I had a pretty good year last year too, but it definitely felt like running in quicksand a little bit, and I think it feels like it's opening up. That's probably worth going over. I think that there's some real cool stuff happening at the moment in terms of what we're seeing come through off some of the personal branding work we're doing, some of the different ways that we're running paid ads. There's a heap to go over.
I think an important thing to note when you look at the US banning TikTok, it is very important for a business not to rely on one social media channel. Yeah. This is probably I think that really, really highlighted for anyone using social media for business, it highlighted that you have to be omni-channel. And we probably have a risk in that area because majority of our leads come through Meta. Yeah. So I think a key focus for us is not only posting on all platforms, but actually getting lead gen from all platforms and developing that skill set out. Yeah. What about we discuss the different platforms on a business sense, and then I think we could do a really good personal branding discussion. I think the work you've been doing on my personal brand is really cool, and that could be thrashed out. So business stuff, what channels, what do you like, what do you not like, what's working, what's not working?
It's probably more trends within channels is the big thing I'd say. So, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, but if you're not doing short form portrait video, you aren't on Meta at the moment. No matter what you say, there is a place for image ads. But from a content perspective, from a getting engagement perspective, and even from an ad perspective, you need short form portrait video content, and you need it to be structured in a way where it captures people's attention inside the first 3 seconds.
Should we? Because I pointed out to you when Instagram made the change from displaying the square pictures to be rectangle pictures. Yeah, I said that change is so obvious. I should have picked that last year that was going to happen. Everything is going to be designed to be easily absorbed from a phone. So it's the rectangle, it's the portrait rectangle needs to be the majority of your content.
Just think about how much time you spend on Instagram on your laptop. Have you tried?
No.
It's awful. It's awful. It's awful. I go through little phases where I'll uninstall all my apps, which is slightly hypocritical for someone who makes money off people using social media. But I try to check messages or things like that on my laptop. The UX is terrible. Every time you click into a reel, it opens up a new tab. You've got to close it. It's just terrible. So it's all portrait. I do think that it depends on your target audience, right? Like if you're talking to people who are 45, 50 plus, Facebook is still real, and desktop computers and laptops and iPads are still real. I'm not saying that they're the main source of traffic, but I'm just saying they're a source of traffic that should be considered. And
But now that's the sub, where it was always you design for the computer as a primary and you design for the phone as a secondary. Now all forms of content creation and displaying of content, it's phone as primary and any other device as secondary.
I have a company that I'm a shareholder in that does real estate videography, and we met with a potential intern today, and he's actually a really experienced photographer already and probably not your typical intern candidate. And the thing that brought him forward wanting to do an element of unpaid and discounted, I suppose is the better term, work for these guys, is he was like, I don't understand like social media videos. I don't understand videos in general, but he's like, the work you guys do with the reels for these property listings and stuff, he's like, no one else is doing it. I think it's fucking cool. I want to come in and learn how to do that. So,
which how backwards is our economy when the second largest city in New Zealand, based on the words you just said, an experienced videographer, and he's not familiar with that. Like, that to me is absolutely wild. It's like when people say, I don't like using computers, or I don't like AI. It's just like, you can't talk like that because you're going to be beaten by someone that does.
You don't need to like it.
I remember, for the younger listeners, it was very, very, very common 7 years ago to not use social media at all.
Yeah.
And to call it silly names like Bookface. I don't use Bookface when you know it's called Facebook. Like that was a very, very common attitude towards social media.
Yeah.
And I say this to all of my sales team all the time. I'm like, you have a free resource connected to the people who care about you, where you can show the world who you are, what you do, and what options you have available to advance your financial success. And I'm like, if you're not actively using that, it is beyond stupid.
Yeah, my BDM today had a conversation with a company that suggested that you couldn't sell a device as large as a heat pump on Facebook. That was the conversation, and we were like, we have clients that have north of $700 million of attributed sales directly back to Facebook ads. Like people that we work with, that we can track that in a CRM.
We would be more.
Yeah. You would. I think you're 800. I think it's 800 and something.
Well, we're 1.3 billion delivered. There'd be 1.4 billion of sales. I'll be over $1 billion directly attributed to social media ads.
So it's a big number.
Just this business.
Yeah.
Like, so statements like that are just absurd. And we're children.
Yeah.
I saw a database email from Surhand. You know that guy from the reality selling TV shows?
Yep.
Yeah, my meeting's here. No, we'll just make him wait as one.
Oh.
Because we're an hour late.
Yeah.
But nah, he'll be fine. Yeah. We should actually get him on the podcast. He's a real legend. So because, Surhan's, it was like $500 million of sales, and it was like halfway through Jan for the year. Just some absurd number that was completely and utterly unable to grasp.
Yeah. And I think probably, and this is the way that we explain this to that company, or the way that my business development manager did, is like, well, who are the people that you want to sell these things to? And they answer the question. It's like, do they have social media? Like there's nothing more to it. It's not conversation. And they're like, oh, we just feel like, I saw this is actually really good. I'm going to do a LinkedIn post about it next week, maybe this week when this is released. But I drove past a digital billboard the other day that was said, be seen, not scrolled. And it was from the digital billboard company. And I was like, that's a really interesting positioning statement. And obviously I'm slightly defensive over social media because it's how I eat. But like, would your preference be to be driven past and be like on a digital screen, or to have someone see an ad pop up on a device they're holding in their hand, they can engage with, they can inquire, they can learn more, they can do all those things with a few clicks?
Also, just think about it logically, right? How do you capture from a billboard, how do you capture that purchaser and get them to make a purchasing decision when they are driving? Like, I never understood the branding thing. And there's people richer than me that do the branding thing. So I'm not being too righteous. I'm really not. But this was always how I did business, and it's worked for me in my life. when you create branding content, do it with as little cost as possible, and preferably do it in the things that matter. So like you make a video, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is who I am, this is what I do. You do your branding in a low cost environment, and then when you spend money, when you properly spend money, the purpose of spending that money is to get leads that you can sell your product to.
Yeah.
Like I never understood the concept of large financial spends that don't have a direct call to action and monetization. Very, 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 very few brands carry the wealth to spend money in that manner.
Yeah. And some exist, but they're just
Some
rarity.
exist,
And everyone who runs a small business with 20 staff and goes, I want to run my advertising the same way as Coca-Cola, probably has to consider their strategy a little bit more. It's like, you could do it, but just like, what are you putting up your house? Like, what's the, like, and is it going to generate a return where you can justify it? Probably not.
When I say stuff like that, I always wonder what someone like Gary Vee would say, whether he would agree or disagree.
Alex Hormozy would argue that Kylie Jenner became a billionaire faster than he did, and the reason that she did was because of brand. But where he does things differently is because he's pushing a personal brand, which is something that we want to talk about as well, where a personal brand becomes a little bit different. I don't disagree with branding, and we do a small amount of radio advertising and a small amount of things, and I go to meetings and people go, I recognize that voice, and it's because I voiced my own radio ads, and like I get some stuff off it. It's just I don't get to say last year I spent, and it's not much, it might have been like 30 grand on radio ads or something, and because of that I generated X amount of dollars in sales, whereas I can have that conversation about my digital spend. But it has to be slow, long game, and it has to be with an amount of money that you would just throw away anyway in the hopes that maybe one day it works. And if you consider your branding work like that, it's cool. Your personal brand is different because it transcends your business. So if I ever exited Digital Simple for any reason, I am still James Wallace. So Digital Simple's brand is something that you can kind of sell on, but you carry your personal brand wherever. And it's also, I feel like, more moldable. Like if you want to change your market perception, I think that you can do that over the course of 12 months with like a well-structured personal branding campaign.
Zuckerberg.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at what he's done. That's a really good example of it. I mean, Alex Hormozy is a good example of coming out of nowhere. Zuckerberg's a good example of completely changing the perception of him in a really short space of time. Yeah. And all he did was wear some chains and get like curly hair and start doing MMA.
I think there's a genuine component. And this is me guessing. This is just my opinion as a massive, massive outsider. I think he started doing the MMA, and that started the change that led to an interesting change for the personal brand to work. Like part of it definitely has to be engineered, right? Which makes sense. But I do think part of it is a really genuine change in himself where he starts training, he starts changing his environment, his chemicals change, his body changes, and he starts seeing things differently and portraying himself differently that the marketplace appeared to really like.
I saw a theory yesterday that stacked up, and I'm not saying this is true, but he had a knee injury early into his MMA training, and the theory essentially was that they put him on TRT as a part of his recovery for his knee injury.
That would make sense.
And that was around the same time where he just became real cool. So like maybe I'm not saying it's true, but
I wasn't meaning an injected chemical change, but no, I agree. But in the same way, whether it was injected TRT or whether it was just him training more, it increases his endorphins, it increases all of these. He probably would have a natural increase in testosterone, etc.
For sure. Yeah, if you spent 10 years of your life staring at a blue light in a room, just typing code, and then you started doing physical exercise, you would change dramatically.
Yeah. And you see it in his body, and you see it in his tone, you see it in how he sort of engages with people. And he's really trendy and cool. Good on him. Yeah. But when you look at the most, well, let's now flow this into personal brand, right? Mm-hmm. So when you watch people, when you look at the great businesses, and you can't really compare the great businesses to people just trying to get ahead, but it's always strong business brand that you can understand and that means something, a strong product that you can understand and it's desirable, and a strong founder brand.
Yeah,
like that is, and I can't think of a top echelon business that existed without the founder brand.
Yeah, especially not.
Okay, let's play a game. Say one.
Movement. I don't know who they are. So the reason they come up is because the founders come out and now started building a personal brand post-exit. So he built a watch company, exited for $300 million USD, and he was based out of America. And then he's now started releasing this big personal brand, which I found, which is all about like the unfulfillment of the exit and about how much he loved work and all that kind of thing beforehand. And I was just, the only reason that comes to mind is because I thought about that and was like, it's wild you built that.
Yeah,
without
but you
a personal
only
brand.
know that because of the personal brand.
Now
You wouldn't have even known the company. But yes, okay, so there are $100 million businesses that are built, but when you think of the real main ones, there's normally a charismatic founder with an engaged personal brand.
And as a minimum, if you do it without that, you're playing it on hard mode.
Correct. So it can be done just harder.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like I make my life harder with my personal brand, but
Not
as a
anymore.
rule of thumb, I'm pretty good.
I think you've had a dream last 18 months, and I think market perception matches that.
Also got older.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Older and like a changing market sort of checks egos. So it's partially age, partially understanding a changing market, that I wasn't God's gift to capitalism, and there was a prevailing market sentiment that significantly helped my business success, and when fighting against that business was harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So difference between age, life experience, a wee kick in the shins, like that sort of develops. And I think you also become a more well-rounded person, and people seem to respond to a more well-rounded person better. And I think you get less strong opinions, even though I always have an opinion on everything. Like, it's more just considerate of the other side and more understanding, because you've sort of seen more of life.
I think that there's like that, those stages of learning or whatever it is, and you go through like unconsciously incompetent, consciously incompetent, and you start you and that helps to shape you. So you look at business, and there's kind of that period where like things are going really well, but you don't even realize your shortfalls.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden your shortfalls smack you in the face, and you're actually twice as good as you were when you thought you were God's gift, but you now think you're half as good because you can tell what's going wrong. Like, we've just gone through this big exercise of hiring some people that are considerably older, more experienced, and things like that. And I was talking to Jen, my fiance, the other day, and I was just like, not really that good at leading a team, eh? Like, didn't fucking know. But, and then I'm like, and now I'm looking at their style, and I'm like, how did you like, you just don't know until you see someone who does it well.
When I think of Larry Page all the time, when you're sick of saying it, people are starting to hear it.
Yeah.
It's not that you're bad at leading a team, because I've watched your skill sets and you're very, very competent, especially someone of your age. You just have to do about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 more reps, instructions, training sessions than what you thought or were comfortable with.
Yeah.
I say the same thing every day for 14 years of it, dramatic. 9 years. Mm-hmm. Pretty much what I've said and what I've done on a day-to-day basis has been very similar for 9 years. And people will go, well, if you do the same thing, you get the same result, you've got to learn, blah, blah, blah. My life's been pretty awesome for that 9 years. So it's like...
the results have been all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so what I reckon we do, key thoughts, bullet points for personal branding 2025.
Yeah. Educational short form portrait content across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Do include Facebook. Well written, well thought out, at times polarizing thought pieces on LinkedIn. If you can compress them to 160 characters, Threads and X as well. If you check those boxes, if you listen to this, I'm going to, out of just interest, put on a personal branding clinic over the next 90 days where I'm like daily posting on LinkedIn, I'm on Threads, I'm on X, I'm twice a day across Meta with picture posts, video posts. I'm doing everything. And I learned this off Blair. I've realized that if you are respected enough as a thought leader, you don't have to be like the main guy, but if you're respected enough as a thought leader, probably a good tactic that people don't consider is publishing polarizing content, especially in places like LinkedIn where people feel like they have a voice. And Blair does it exceptionally
quite good
well
because people are more respectful.
Yeah.
Where at least if you were to put that same polarizing content on, say, Facebook or Instagram, you just get yelled at.
But also, is that a part of a strategy?
I have no problem with being yelled at. I'm the best at it.
But so the bullet points are like, if there's only one platform you do, it does depend on target audience a little bit, but I would probably do Instagram short form video. Secondary to that, I would do LinkedIn, and I'd do it a minimum of 3 times a week. I think if you check both of those boxes and you do that over a 90-day period, daily on Instagram, 3 times a week minimum on LinkedIn, you'll be really surprised at the level of feedback and probably customers you get. If you have resources and time available, content like this goes wild. And the feedback we've had on our podcast since we've released it has been absolutely absurd. I'd written off a year of just putting content out with no return, and that hasn't been the case at all. It took 2 or 3 months and we started getting a return from it.
What's the most listened to podcast?
You are second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fuck, I'm coming back.
Billy McLaughlin.
Bullshit.
No shit.
Good on
And
him.
I don't know
That's
if you've
so
listened to
good.
the podcast. It was fucking epic.
Good on him.
So what worked was he had this story about how he did
Mowing the lawns, any loan for $20. I saw the clip.
Yeah. So that drove a shitload of traffic to the podcast, and that's so Billy's
Good on
number
him.
one at the moment. Yeah.
I'm going to have to come back. I need to say some wild stuff. I'm just going to drop something controversial, get stuff in there. We'll blow that up. Okay, I've got someone sitting in the lobby. I might actually make him do a podcast with us. Let's leave that as part 1. And then I reckon we do a part 2, and we've got to get into the flywheel.
The flywheel and paid media.
Yes.
Cool. All right. Sounds good.
Appreciate you guys for listening. Like, follow, subscribe, all the things. Cheers.